Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements. And this week I'm joined by guest co-host Vanessa Loney, and we are taking your questions. This is another installment of one of my, I have a lot of favorites, I guess, when it comes to the podcast, but one of my favorite things to do is the event mailbag, because this is where we get to answer more of your specific questions. These are ones that we got both from our email inbox, from our DMs. We've also got a couple are from our Better Events conference attendees. And a lot of times we have time to give a whole episode to some of these questions, but I wanted to make sure we got you some answers. And I love getting Vanessa's take on them as well. So I hope you enjoy this mixed bag of different questions that we got from you all about events and running your own business. Without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. This week, I'm joined once again by fellow guest co-host Vanessa Loney. And before we jump into this week's topic, which is all your questions that we've gotten from you listeners, it's going to be a nice mailbag mixture. We have our conversation starter, which is already making me kind of giggle, Vanessa. But what, Vanessa, is your favorite pasta shape?
I'm going to be boring, and I love a good spaghetti. I just feel like it absorbs the sauce the way I need it to. The nice, the slurp at the end, it does exactly what I need it to do. And it's long enough so that I can savor the sauce as it's entering in. So I'm going to keep with the spaghetti, the long spaghetti shape. And what is yours? I can't wait to hear about it.
I am going to link mine in the show notes because I, like you, Vanessa, I was like, oh, I like a very simple or like a shell or a rigatoni, it's like the tube. And then like in the last 6 months with my lazy cooking journey, I've been like, let me just elevate my basics. And I picked up this bag of what is called radiatori. I had to Google it, listeners, because I'm like, I know what it looks like, but I couldn't have told you what it said. It's this brand Mama Depandi. They have it at my Fred Meyer, which is like my local grocery store, but they're a chain, and it's in the like fresh cheese section. They normally have it. And what it looks like is it's kind of like a swirl with squiggles. And so to your point, Vanessa, structurally, it just holds on to sauce really, really well. And kind of like a rigatoni, that's the tube, but it kind of can fall out of the tube. So I don't know. The pasta was delicious too. I'm mainly the sauce is what I'm there for. And so I need the pasta to hold the sauce. So that is the one that I can't stop thinking about and need to probably go buy some more because it's shelf stable and it is very delicious. But that's the radiatori is the shape.
You're making me really hungry right now. Just us talking about pasta and sauces. Yes, please. The next episode, we need to just be eating pasta while we talk.
It'll just be a pasta episode.
Okay, so why we picked this topic, we'd love to hear from you listeners. Some of your questions inspire full episodes, and others we bundle into these mailbag episodes so we can answer as many questions as possible. So let's get into it. Logan, from Amy, what does your workbook or event Bible look like?
Oh gosh, Amy, this is a great question. And I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this in an auditory form for you. So I'm going to bring up, I'll just read off of one of my workbooks. And hard part is it really varies. And so one of the common mistakes I think I see a lot of people make is they make too many separate documents and it's in too many different places and things get lost. And so my favorite, my workbook is always going to be an Excel sheet. I use Google Sheets. It's my favorite tool. So it's a Google Sheet that has multiple tabs for the different places to hold information. And often when I'm working with clients, unfortunately, I have to have varying links to different documents that maybe they get access to and they don't see my workbook. So one of my tabs is inevitably a links tab. That is just the place where I can put all the links to all the random, maybe it's a client shared folder. Maybe it's a copy of their script. Maybe it's where they're uploading content. last year's recording, this year's event website, one place for all of those links to live. And that just helps my team know, hey, I can always check this tab first. If it's not on this tab, then I can ask Logan, because that's like the number one question I get from teams is like, where's the link to that thing? And it was in somebody's inbox. If I'm working with folks on my own team, like as Logan Strategy Group, I have a couple events a year where I hire people. That links tab is also a key details tab where I kind of have like, here's the name of the client, all the who, what, when, where, why, event date, what do I got? Links to the run a show, agenda, description. Are we using a virtual platform? Is it all in person? Who's the audience? How many people are going to be there? What's the venue location, parking, Wi-Fi? Like all of that lives in one tab for me as like more of like a know before you go info. And then I always have like a contact tab that tells me all of my team and their phone numbers and their email addresses. Time zones, another one, if I'm working with people across time zones. I have an on-site schedule or a production schedule, which is usually where I'm mapping out call times, like what time folks have to start, maybe where we're getting meals, rehearsals, all of that's in one master schedule. My beautiful run a show, that is how I live my life on site with show calling and producing, usually an asset list where I'm listing out all the like slides I'm getting, the videos, the audio assets, any of that, that's a tab. And then I'm kind of flexible on the rest of it. Some shows I'm working on one project workbook right now that I think we have like 20 tabs, which is probably too many tabs, but Vanessa's shaking her head like there is that many details sometimes. And for others, it's that simple. It's just 4 tabs. Or even I have a show where it's just me as the show caller. So I literally have a on-site production schedule and run a show. Those are the two tabs. So the nice part is, and the thing I'm trying to get better at is templatizing a little bit. I did this process like 2 years ago where I made some templates. I probably need to refresh said templates. I'm currently looking at AI tools to help me make some more standard operating procedures to like build that out. But that's a very production mind answer. So Vanessa, I'm going to kick it to you. What would you add to that question from Amy about your workbook or event Bible?
First off, teach me your ways, because I feel that I want to aspire to be that organized in my workbooks. We do kind of like a know before you go. We actually got a little bit more sophisticated. We use Google as our infrastructure, like our backend infrastructure, and we use Google Sites. So the website, so you build out a website. So now any event that we do, all of our main points of contact, it's almost like we create a lookbook. And so that on site, the team who they might not be in meetings with the client, they can see who the main players are, their titles. We also have the same with the team. I'm usually putting together a team of contractors. And so now we put together who you're going to be working with on site for that. And so that is essentially like our event Bible, right? It's like everyone that is important for you to know and what all of our roles are. Sometimes it's not very clear what our roles and responsibilities will be. And so we really created this Google site, this intranet, to really help us with planning the event. And so again, that's more sophisticated than I have done in the past, but it has been a game changer for me in addition to all of our Google documents. What's really great is you can link your workbook within your intranet because it's all Google related. And so you click on your workbook and it'll bring up all the things you needed to. So mine might be a little bit more sophisticated, but it's still Google. So start somewhere, and Google is always a good low-hanging fruit.
Yes. No, I love that. I'll try to link it in the show notes for listeners of where to go learn about Google Sites, because I will be trying to learn about Google Sites. I think that's super helpful. Our next question we got here from a listener was from Bernadette, asking any advice on food and beverage creativity and trends.
Yeah. So, I actually learned this. I was working as a freelancer for a colleague of mine a couple of years ago. And with all of the dietary restrictions, it really becomes difficult to make sure you're hitting every mark. And so what they did for their breakfast buffets, they deconstructed, let's just say an omelet or eggs, instead of putting the eggs with the peppers and the bacon, and everything was in its own like tray. That way, any dietary restriction or whatever the case may be, you kind of hit it. And so even that year, I think I was like going without gluten or something to that year. I was able to eat whatever I wanted to eat because everything was separated. And I had never thought, it's such a like duh moment. But when you don't do those type of things often, to see someone else's someone else's idea. I've been using deconstructed buffets now for all of my events. And so that was for me a game changer when thinking about food and beverage, because there's just so many dietary restrictions now. So yes, that's my tidbit right there. And then I like to go to other people's events. Like I like to get ideas from other people's events, whether it's events that I'm attending or if I am freelancing or doing anything of that nature. I just like to learn. I'm always learning different trends and different ideas. And so that's probably my advice, is always be learning. What about you, Logan? I know you have not worked in food and beverage a lot, but anything that you've seen in events that you've attended, you attend a lot of events and you eat, I'm sure, from a lot of crew meal locations. Anything that comes to mind?
Oh, I love your deconstructed one. That is great. I think for me, this is more a wish probably than a trend. Is like, I hope and wish that event hosts are being intentional with their food. I recently worked a conference that was really interesting, and it was targeted at a bunch of doctors in the medical community. It was all about health. The interesting thing they did, which was probably driven by cost savings, but kind of leaned into their message, was lunch was on your own. They did not provide lunch, and they were encouraging folks to go out and, explore. We were in a nice hub of a city with plenty of things within walking distance, but they did give them a nice, generous 2-hour break to go out and get whatever it is you want and continue your conversations. And I thought that was just a fascinating thing, because I know with rising costs, it's like right after, like, production, I'd say, is number 2. Number 1, or really up there, is your food and beverage. And so I know personally, I'm just very sick of event chicken. I don't get excited if I see chicken on the buffet, because it's usually, you're just like, oh, like it's just overdone. So that's one, I think, just figuring out alternatives. If it's not chicken, I love your deconstructed idea. Buffets, anything you can make it that folks are kind of getting to build what they want. We usually get, my running joke is that for long shows, when I'm on site for like 6 days or something, is, you're on site long enough when you've gotten through the meal rotation. Like the kitchen has like 6 meals or something. Then by the time you're like, oh, we're back at taco night again. And it's, the next. Anytime you can let your AV crew, your production crew, eat the same food that the attendees are eating, is always going to make people happy, versus ordering them pizza or doing like a boxed sandwich versus a hot meal that you're giving attendees. Sometimes that's more cost efficient because the kitchen's already making that. Sometimes I know it's not, it's cost prohibitive, but I just would say be intentional with what you're giving your guests, and not just doing it because you did it last year. Because I think some people aren't going to miss. I don't know if I wasn't part of that to know if they missed the lunch being provided or not, but it was like, oh, they're interested more in they were able to go heavier with snacks during coffee breaks. They had a very generous spread. So there would be something, if you wanted to be someone who grabbed protein bars and things at the snack time, you don't have to necessarily go out and buy food if you were trying to save.
Yeah, I love that. We actually did that, not to belabor this question, but we actually did that at a conference of mine. We let them go eat, but we gave them gift cards. As a part of their registration, we gave them a $25 gift card, and we were attached to a food court and a mall and all of these places they could go. And they appreciated that. One, to your point, they could go network, they can go off property. And then they were also in charge of their own food. And it just alleviated the stress from us trying to figure out all the dietary needs, and it gave them that opportunity. So yes, I agree that is a great alternative. All right, moving into the next question. What are the best things to ask your AV tech?
Not all of our questions come with names, because some people just submitted anonymously. But for this question, I'm going to answer it assuming it might be a smaller setup AV wise, where necessarily you don't have a show caller or production company. You're just using an in-house, maybe tech or two. I mean, my number one thing is always asking if they've tested things and on a daily basis, not just on your setup day. And like, if you are someone that has had any AV challenges in the past, like, feel empowered to say, hey, can we test them right now while I'm here? And tomorrow, can we arrange that I come in 20 minutes before doors open and you test them in my presence? Not saying your folks aren't doing that already, but just being that extra check that, like, let me hear a video with audio. Let me hear, just testing the lights work, the audio works, the music plays, the slides advance, doing all of that kind of tech checking. And then I always love backup plans. I mean, Vanessa, this working with me. I will belabor that point till the dogs come home, of kind of just talking your AV of like, and this is something as a producer show caller, this is my job to do. So if you don't have someone like me to ask those questions, what's your backup plan? Are you using a podium mic? What's the backup plan to the podium mic going down? Is the current plan that the AV tech is going to briskly walk from the back of the room to hand off a handheld mic? Why don't you just put an extra handheld mic in the podium? And every time you brief speakers, it's like, hey, the podium mic's not working. Just grab this handheld mic. It's locked on. That's another tip I would give. Make sure you can tell your AV tech you want all the microphones locked on, and in the back of the room, they're just bringing them up and down versus your speakers having to like turn on and off a microphone. That's something that's easy. That's what I just did on a show a couple months ago. We luckily never had to use this backup plan, but every speaker knew I had a backup microphone in the podium. It was locked on. All they had to do if the podium mic stopped working would be pick up that microphone, hold it to their mouth, and the back of the room, we just bring it up, and all of a sudden we'd have a backup mic. But again, didn't have to use it, but I asked. So testing and backup plans would be my really big things. And just if you want to get really into the weeds, double checking some of the things you ordered. So if you ordered 2 laptops so that you have a primary main one to show slides off and a backup, it's okay to ask, hey, can we see slides off the backup right now? Because you might be surprised that the salesperson who sold you that did not tell the on-site team that's actually executing, and all of a sudden you don't have that extra laptop that you were paying for. So that's one. Those are like my 3, if I had to pick 3. Anything
Love
to add,
that.
Vanessa?
Well, I don't work as much in tech. I hire a person like Logan to do all of that for me. But if I were to ask, I usually, when I'm building out the run a show or the programming with the client, I always ask how much time is ideal between general sessions or to mic people up. If I have a panel of 5 people, how much time ideally will you need to take the mics off and then get the next group mic'd up? And so I do it as more of a courtesy, because I know that sometimes we hand the tech crew the program and it's like, this is tight. And so now I'm really intentional about asking the questions ahead of time. What would you like? What would be best? And then going back to the client and really, advocating for our AV team. So that's my 2 cents.
I love it, Vanessa. I did have a show a couple weeks ago that I had to do a live mic exchange, me as the show caller while calling the show, because we didn't have an extra audio person, and I'm going up behind the speaker, like taking off, unplugging their mic, plugging it into the next one, and like sending them up there. And the introducer who was in the middle, I was like, you don't need to talk slow, but just know you don't need to rush. I need about 30 seconds to like make sure this works. And I'm not an audio person, but I was the only body that could step away to do that move. So yeah. That's a great one. Our last question that's kind of in this like events overall bucket from Rachel. What are some thoughtful ways to reward or celebrate people on your team before and after an event, especially when giving a monetary bonus isn't necessarily an option?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the post. Post event, I usually, again, if you're not trying to financially put up any money, we'll do a debrief on a call right after the event. We've all had time. And I personally, one by one, in front of everyone, just highlight why I appreciated working with you and why, like what you brought to the team. I think people do not get appreciated out loud enough. And so you don't need to do anything extravagant, just a thank you and why, being intentional about it. Just saying thank you as, oh, thanks team, you guys did great. No, like Susie, I appreciated that you went above and beyond at the registration desk, and I got nothing but rave reviews, but the fact that you just were a friendly face, right? Like those are the things that people just want to feel appreciated. If I'm going to work 15 plus hours for you, I want to know that it was worth it. So I've found that has been a great, just a great way to appreciate my staff. Before an event, in the years past, and Logan, you've been part of this, I wine and dine my team. I take them out to some fancy restaurant and we just have a good time. If you don't have the means to do that, you have to eat at some point. You all can just eat together. I think it's really important to establish the team camaraderie first. Shared experiences, laughs, like really humanizing the team. And then you come into the event and I feel like that core, right? That relationship part, it really does help when you are working those 15-hour days. And so whether it is you're fronting the bill or just let's all meet up at whatever location and just have dinner together, I think is a really invaluable. What about you, Logan?
I'm glad you mentioned the team dinner. I was going to mention it if you hadn't, because I've stolen that idea from you, or maybe I flattered you and copied you, if that's a better way to say it. Because I've thought it was so smart to do, because it's both twofold of, like you're saying, of building camaraderie with the team, but it also is a gratitude kind of thank you thing. And especially if you have anybody who doesn't know each other, it just kind of helps. You're giving a natural point that, like, hey, you all know each other as humans, and now you're going to work together. So I love the team dinner. It is something, if you're like a contractor or someone, that I've actually started to like bake into some of my hard costs for certain shows. Not every show I do this, because I'm not responsible for the team, but that is one that isn't me giving money to people, but it's me saying, hey, I'm treating you guys to dinner. And, we're not going crazy, but we're going somewhere nice, and we're going to get appetizers, and we're going to get dessert, and treat yourself. I also think if you didn't want to add any budget, even like I said, a handwritten note, I think is a nice, if you verbally say it, Vanessa, like you do, also handwritten if there's not like a space to recognize them in person. I've also tried to be better at passing along some of that specific feedback that I usually get the honor of hearing directly from client or from attendees, and like sending that with the team, so it can kind of close the loop of like, I've said nice things to them, but wait, here are other people saying nice things about either the experience we created. I think that's always a great way to help celebrate folks. And then as simple as like a surprise and delight of like grabbing coffee to your hardworking reg team and walking in with some, they've had free brewed coffee, but you've walked in with like 2 lattes, or I mentioned it in a previous episode, like I love myself some emergency chocolate. It is a $15 bag of Dove chocolate that's got dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and caramel individually wrapped. And I can't tell you how many quote unquote emergencies I've diffused by having chocolate, and how many people I've made smile by having chocolate. And that's something that like, that's out of my pocket on almost any show I do at this point, because I found it's just a nice way of like a little bit of sugar for someone, if someone's going through a tough time, or even just like a little, like, I thought of someone other than myself in this moment. And that has tended to go a long way and is not a huge budget item.
Yeah, I agree. I think acts of service, to your point, that coffee run, we, especially as the entrepreneurs or the business owner, I am not too good to just go get us all coffee, and I will do the coffee run. Right. And so just small things like that go a long way. So I appreciate that as well. All right. Moving into our next question. This is more, I think, business owner, freelancer related. This first question is, I think, anonymous. What is your advice for finding new ways to increase our fees or creative ways to market?
Oh, pricing is such a hard one as a business owner. I think for me, I usually do increasing any of my fees, especially with repeat folks. It's just an annual thing. So it's like when we're talking about next year now, the thing I've learned, I've had a good problem, is people are booking me earlier, which is awesome. But that means usually I'm getting asked in August what my rates are for the following April. So it's like, okay, I got to kind of think of that ahead of time. I do know some pros that will try to incentivize clients to sign early, so they'll honor this year's rates next year. So that is something you can do. I usually, when we're talking about the next year, will say, okay, this year, my rates were, this amount. Now they've raised by a couple dollars at my hourly rate or whatever it is. And just instituting that from the jump when they reach out. It is also something I have not probably done it enough, but with new folks, especially if you realize you are getting very undercharged in certain ways, when you get a new client, that is usually a safe place to just set whatever your new pricing is. It's harder to do that with folks you've worked with over the years and they know you, and doing a crazy like 50% jump is going to make them feel a certain way. But I also have acknowledged, like, I had some clients I worked with 10 years ago and they got me when I was like $20 an hour. And so I've had to like very incrementally move up with them. Vanessa, you and I worked a project together, like our very first one. And I remember it was like a huge jump for me. And I was like, what? I have been vastly undercharging. So then it was like, all right, anybody new? I got to jump from this, this point onward. And I constantly do keep a gauge, especially when I get like subcontracted out to people, of just seeing like, oh, my years of experience, my value is adding. I'm faster at certain things. Like, I've got this experience. So calendar year is always a natural place to do that. But I also would start to like also keep track of your hard costs. We alluded a bit, like the economy is tough right now. Things are more expensive. And so whether it's a cost maybe you used to eat, like per diem. Sometimes I build that into my project rate. Now it's like, hey, food's more expensive. That's gone up. I got to put that as a separate item, like calling that out to clients. It's expensive for us like it is for clients. So, or travel, maybe you used to cover the gas reimbursement and now you can't do that. You need to make that as a client facing cost. I think as long as you're transparent about it and giving a reason of why it's not just arbitrarily, why you're doing that, I think that's a way to increase some of maybe your profit margins at the end of the day and stop eating as much, because that is when I first started, I wanted to be very nice. I wanted to be kind. I wanted people to work with me. And so I was very flexible on what I build back to client. And I think I've gotten a lot more firm on exactly clarifying in that process of like, hey, I cover, it's my time and my food, but I'm not covering Ubers, taxis, flights, hotel, because all of that's contingent on it. Do you book me now or do you book me 4 months from now? Vanessa, what would you add to that in terms of increasing fees or even the marketing side of that question?
Yeah, I agree. I think the hard costs, same to your point, I was like trying to just cover enough of the cost and I wasn't getting enough of a profit margin. And so now no matter what, like for the per diem, before I wasn't even given a per diem, I was doing reimbursable expenses, and the time that it took for my team to go through the receipts, all those things, I said, we're just doing a per diem now. And so now I build that into all of our pricing for the following year or whatever year. Like you said, the gas prices, all those things that go up, I think it really does help with driving the costs. But I am a proponent of increase when you feel that you need to increase. I actually did increase by 50% with one of my first ever clients, and they agreed, which then I'm like, okay, because they see my value, they see my team's value, and the time and effort it's going to take to find someone else, they don't see the value in that. And so I do believe that us as business owners or people who you are your own business, you need to get paid for what you're worth. I am do not come down, stay strong with your hourly rate, stay strong with your day rate, because people will pay it. And if there is a client that does not want to pay it, then that might not be your client. And so because I have been successful in some of these negotiations, I am just like, they will pay if you are confident in your rate. So that I think is my tidbit of information.
Go Vanessa. Yes. I mean, that's, and like a reasoning, if I had to present that, I mean, it would be also, you're trying to maintain good people. And that's the other part, is like, people are getting booked and busy, and I'm charging what I am because I'm getting the best and I'm getting them at the rate they want. You don't have to say that part, but that's just the, like, you're paying them what they, maybe even more than what they're charging other people, because you're like, I want you on my project and not on the other person's project. And I've done that argument even with some vendors when we're like, we can go with the cheapest option, but also are we going to get what we paid for, in the sense of like, I know this other one's more expensive, but they've told me we're getting the A team. So I'm going to go with those guys because and that's like, I'm better negotiating for others than I am for myself. So that's the framing where I'm like, if I'm doing that argument, I gotta like allow my client to do that. I also have a bad habit of self-negotiating, where I like build a proposal and then I will not send it yet. And I'll be like, oh, that's expensive, I should come down. And it's like, don't do that. I got to give people first right of refusal of like, send it to them, let them negotiate with me versus negotiating myself. And that's more for you freelancers out there, because I think it's always tough. And Vanessa has been one of my first phone calls, usually when I need to get gassed up about charging more. So I wish everybody had a Vanessa in their pocket.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another one on the business side would be, this was a question we got about, how do you maintain a professional working relationship with staff and contractors that have become friends over the years?
It is really difficult. I, in my own personal life, boundaries. You got to establish boundaries. Once you become friends, and so let's just say you hired someone, you knew someone who knew someone, and now they're a contractor on your event. You've become really great friends off of on site. And now you want to continue to hire that person, but now you've created a relationship outside of the work, and they can text you, and they have access to you. That for me has been the biggest boundary, is that if we are working together and you're helping to plan my event, do not text me at 8 p.m. because I'm thinking it's a friendly chit chat and you're asking me about work, because I have to be able to distinguish between work me and Kiki, we go get a drink me. And so for me, that has been the biggest thing, is establishing boundaries. If you are asking me about work stuff, please do not text me, right? In general, we use Google. And so we use the Google Chat feature, or like if you have Slack, all work related things need to be pushed over that way. Otherwise, it's just our friendship and our work relationship become one. And so for me, it's just been really establishing clear boundaries on communication. But I do think it helps as well. It helps with the on-site. You already have this really strong relationship and this bond. And so when you are working 15-hour days and we get a little rough, the attitudes come out, it's not personal. We know each other. And so I think it does help sometimes with that on-site aspect as well. But boundaries is really key. What about you, Logan?
Oh, so good. Yeah, I think for me, it's always knowing, even though you're a friend, it's like having a contract, having a scope of work. I mean, it's important in any relationship, but especially with friends. I also will just be honest with folks in email of like, just let me know if this is something you're not interested. Like, I don't want the friendship to impact you feeling like you have to say yes because we're friends. Of just being like, I'm genuinely would love to have you on this, but if something else is interesting to you or you're already booked, like I totally get it. But yes, I definitely at the start with some folks would either have and I was guilty of this. I was too casual for other people of being like, great, they're on the event. And it's like, I didn't even send them an agreement. We didn't talk about payment terms. Like, do I have their tax form? Like, there are certain things that's like, okay, I still got to go through that process. But I think they are kind of your diamonds in the rough of folks that you get along really well with personally can be your best professional ally. But I can see, Vanessa, I've definitely probably broken one of those boundaries or so of texting you about work things. But I get like, it makes sense. And that's one of like communicating of like, how do you prefer to be communicated with? Because that is one that I think even with clients will blur that boundary of especially friends and clients who've become friendly. It is one of those of like, okay, you can call me at midnight, but do I need you to like?
Exactly. Yeah. I think you hit it right on the head, because that also it translates to clients becoming friends and, them asking for stuff that they might have not asked you in the beginning of your relationship. And so really being strong in your boundary setting is just, I think, the key in trying to navigate those. And so, all right, next question is from Lori. Any good resources that you can recommend for me to check out to get a solid understanding of the finance business aspect of starting out as a freelancer?
I mean, I feel like I constantly am recommending SCORE and SBA, like the Small Business Administration. SBA.org, it's just the government organization for small businesses. They have got a lot of really like free resources in terms of webinars, just if you want to go and learn like basics of cash flow and some other stuff that's like your core understanding. It's not necessarily event specific. SCORE is also great. That's part of their free mentoring program where you can actually talk to someone live in person or virtual and get then specific advice on your specific business, which is helpful. In terms of reading, I mean, the financial business side is one I constantly you learn by doing, because you kind of just make some mistakes and you keep going. I love the Profit First book. It is one, if I could go back and tell like baby freelancer Logan starting at 2016, like read this book. It just helps think about your finances especially as a freelancer when like you are your own business, in terms of buckets to put money for taxes away, for operating expenses, to pay yourself. Because that was something it took me years to kind of figure out and break away from the accounting that said, oh, you made $12,000 in profit. It's like, great, where is it? And my dad at the time helped me with my taxes. He's like, well, you've already spent it. It's like, well, how'd that happen? So I would say Profit First. How about you, Vanessa? What would you add to that?
Yeah, I think the version of me looking back at when I first started, I think I should have, even the 30-minute free consultation with a financial planner or an accountant would have been so beneficial, because to your point, I think that we make the profit, then we spend the money, and then we hire people, and then you pay them, but then you don't pay yourself. I think that just having a conversation, a baseline conversation of what do you want to get out of your business or your freelance? Are you just trying to pay bills? Right? Are you just doing this gig work just to pay enough bills to get by? Are you trying to make a profit? What percent? Like, I just think that having those clear conversations, because sometimes we're in our head, and when you say stuff out loud to people who are skilled, things could just be, it could be said back to you and you're like, I didn't think of it in that way. So the version of me now that can hindsight speak to someone who this is what they do. And this is coming from someone, my degree is in accounting. I am an accountant by trade, and I should have talked to someone in the beginning. Now I'm better. I got the financial accountant or the financial planner, and I have an accountant. But you are only as good as your money can go, as far as your money can go. And so I would say that is probably the most important thing is what are you trying to get out of your profit? And what are you trying to do with it? So speak to someone.
Yes. And that is the first thing that I realized I needed to pay for, like as a more consistent contractor, not linked to specific project, but like what I pay for as a business was paying for what I originally had, I think, was a bookkeeper. And then now it's evolved into I have a one-stop shop that does my like bookkeeping and my taxes. And I have transformed from 3 years ago, me was very stressed come tax time. Current me, we're very zen on taxes. It's great. It's great to outsource that to somebody else to worry and like keep me on track. Now, do I probably need to talk to a financial planner? Probably.
Baby steps.
Yeah, we're progressing. All right, before we wrap up, we had two kind of fun ones for one fun and one we'll end on a little more serious note. But outside events, with all of our travel for events, what are your favorite loyalty programs? Credit cards, airlines, hotels.
So I am a lounge girly. Anytime I'm flying anywhere, I cannot sit out with the others. I need to be in someone's lounge. So I have 2 credit cards. I have the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and I also have Amex Platinum Business. And so that for me justifies why I'm paying for 2. One is business and one is personal. But either way, I am always in someone's lounge. And so for me, it's just been a game changer, especially we're on work calls or we need a quiet place to be. Like it just has been so important for me to be in a lounge. And so those 2 credit cards have gone a very long way. And I'm also an American Airlines. I have status with them. And I find that I get upgraded so much with them, especially because of the partnerships. So like American Airlines and Alaska Airlines are a partner. I, no matter what, always get upgraded to first class on Alaska Airlines. And I think it's because our points just go further with them. And so I just signed up for all the loyalty, the airlines, anything that you can, the hotels, because it really does. It's a game changer once you start capitalizing off of that. How do you feel about that, Logan?
I love it. I have different ones that I'm loyal to. So hopefully that lets listeners know there's options. I have also become a lounge lover. I do love getting into a lounge. I love a little snack, a little hot tea, a little place, especially for calls. It's reliable Wi-Fi place to sit. I am a Delta diva, talked about it on the podcast. So I do all things Delta. Like you, Vanessa, they've hooked me in. I get the free upgrades. They treat me right. I'm kind of on it. So anytime I can fly Delta, and I would just encourage anyone, wherever you are, whatever your home airport is, like trying to the best of your ability within reason to kind of always fly the same airline will help you build that status and get those perks. It sounds like American and Delta are pretty good at rewarding you if you do travel. I have like the Delta credit card that gets me into the lounges. And then the one I have is the Capital One Venture card, was my personal one. So my version of your Chase one that gets me into some Capital One lounges, but it also gets me Priority Pass, which gets you into a bunch of more international. I feel like they have better lounges, but they've also had random ones. I feel like Charlotte, North Carolina had a Priority Pass lounge I could get into, which was always nice. And then hotels, I joke, it depends on the year because it depends on the clients. So last year I had a bunch of clients that love Marriott. So this year I have very high Marriott status, which is then if I'm personally traveling, I'm usually using Marriott. I'll see where I land this year. I think 3 years ago I had a Hilton year. But again, just making sure it never hurts to go down to the front desk if someone booked your hotel room for you and just ask, hey, or when I check in, I'm always like, I've got a rewards number with you. I don't know if that does anything. Do you mind adding it? And they're like, usually will. I also have very random point, like the Hyatt and all the other places. I was like, I've never gotten status with them, but I always give my number just in case.
Agreed. Yeah, I think to your point, always ask, even if someone else booked your hotel on their own card, sometimes they will give you the points. 2 of the 2 credit cards I mentioned, the Chase Sapphire Reserve and the Amex Platinum, I think Amex Platinum gets you Hilton Gold and Marriott Gold. Like you already are status as a baseline. And so definitely something to consider. I also like that both credit cards, if you're going to do global entry or TSA pre-check, they will pay for it. And so you pay with it on your credit card and then they'll credit it for you. So I do a lot of the perk calculation I had a friend who actually does like a full deep dive of like what's the ROI on it. And so if you want to go crazy, I'm sure there's YouTube people out there that will do a breakdown for you. But yes, I think that rewards, it does feel rewarding. The final question, what advice do you have for event pros on maintaining wellness and stress management?
No, Vanessa, this feels like it hits to our pre-recording conversation. I mean, there's no one thing fits all. I feel like, so for me, it's finding out what works for you. But I think I'm in a season of my life right now where I realize like no one's going to prioritize my health for me. Like I have to. And this came up after having lots of conversations with folks on site that are always like, they were super stressed out and they'd look at me, they're like, wow, you're so calm. Do you just like do this all the time? There's like, I do. I'm also not as stressed as you are, but like, yes, I guess that is a reflection that I should try to, work on some of that. And so for me, it's movement is something that is making me feel very grounded. And it's actually ironically energized me. So like working out in the morning and then having a long day on site, I always thought that would just make me more tired. But if I have a workout in the morning, I feel like my brain's working faster. Like everything just feels like it's working, it's moving, it's grooving. And so I think figuring out whether that's even just taking a 10-minute walk outside when you can in the morning, or reaching for, I've been talking about, I eat so much food on site that's like, it's on site food. So it's like, what can I figure out? Do I have a fridge in my hotel room and do either I go get groceries or I have some shows where I truly cannot, that I get them delivered to the hotel of like, just have some bananas, something else on site. And that just taking care of myself, I've realized can help me then show up better in what I'm doing, and maintain that I'm not necessarily sacrificing my health for the job. So that would be, I'd say, movement and seeing where you can get other like little wellness things in for yourself.
I love that. I think, we don't do self-care enough, and self-care is not just a spa. All right. Self-care is really being intentional about how you are mentally taking a break. I do believe standing in the sun, getting that natural vitamin D is such a key, like, game changer for me. And even if I'm carving out 5 minutes throughout my work day to get that, it really does feel like an energy boost for myself. And then also just stepping away. And sometimes I'll dance it out. I'll turn on a song in between calls. And if it's a 2-minute song of a Beyonce or whatever it is, and I'm just dancing it out, whatever the stress, whatever the day, just get it off of me. And then I'm ready to go. So I'm a proponent of a dance party.
We love a dance party. I hope that answers your question. I think, again, there's lots of ways to think about it, but we could go on and on with your questions, but we are going to wrap it up here. So with that, Vanessa, you have our bonus tip this week.
I think piggybacking off of this last question, I think having your hobby or your me time is so important. For me, it's taking myself to the movies. I really enjoy a good movie day. And so I just think having a me time thing, it's just carved out specifically for what you like to do, has been key for myself. So find your me time.
Get your me time in. I love it. Maybe your me time's here with us on the podcast and you're already taking us on a walk. That's great. But before we wrap up, I do want to thank you, Vanessa, because this is your last guest co-host episode with me, which I cannot believe. It's been so fun and so fast all at the same time.
This has been great. I appreciate you and Mary. I know Mary is taking care of that baby, but I appreciate you both in your friendship. When we talk about friends or staff or contractors that turn into friends, you both have been that for me. And so I appreciate our friendship so much.
Yeah.
And then wrapping this up, where to find the Better Events Podcast? IG, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can find them at Better Events Pod. Email them at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can connect with them on LinkedIn directly as well. Just let them know that you heard from them or heard about them from the podcast. They'd love to hear from you. I still hear from people to this day, 2 years later, since my first podcast, about how they heard about me through you. And so you guys are really and truly game changers in industry, game changers. And so if you want to learn more about Better Events content, or if you want more Better Events content, join their private community on Substack. And again, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.